We're gonna just start by finding, again, a comfortable seat. We're gonna sit upright but at ease. Gently closing the eyes if that feels comfortable. Otherwise, a soft gaze on the floor in front of you is fine. Tonight, we're gonna be practicing with awareness and compassion as we explore more parts work. I'll start with a brief body scan to help us drop from the head into our bodies and then move into present time awareness that will meet with compassion. The meditation will begin and end with the sound of the bell. Let's begin by taking a few deep breaths together as a community, in through the nose and out through the mouth. Finding a moment here to connect to ourselves and to community together, in through the nose, out through the mouth. One more time. Out through the mouth. Taking the beginning of this practice here to maybe roll your shoulders if that feels good, or roll the neck. Just finding ways to connect to our bodies, to start to connect to our bodies. Starting with our body scan from the top of our head. Imagining this rain is coming through the roof and pouring over our bodies, starting with our head. With each drop of rain, just releasing tension along the way as it moves down our scalp, our temples, our eyes, finding deep rest in our eyes, moving down the jaw and our mouth. Check in if your tongue is on the roof of your mouth, relax that too. And as the rain travels down our necks, easing the tension here, around our shoulders and our back. Over our chest as it expands with each breath and contracts, finding more space here. As the ease travels down into our bellies, where we relax and soften, over our hips, down our legs, into our feet, feeling our bodies be supported by the cushion or chairs that we sit on, being held and grounded. And just taking a moment here to connect to the sensations of the body as we find more ease and space. Beginning to invite a curiosity to this experience in this moment. I'm going to invite you to begin to explore what might be coming up in the mind tonight as it relates to a part. And a part can be sort of felt as is there anxiety or fear or doubt coming up in the mind. And I don't want you to pick up the heaviest thing to hold tonight, just something that feels manageable in this moment. And as you settle around whatever that experience may be, I'll name it as anxiety for myself. Just seeing if I can be present with what's arriving there. Not attempting to fix it or change it or make it go away. Can I just be a witness to the anxiety that's coming up in my mind? does that feel like to just be a witness to this experience? Are there sensations that start to come up in the body? Is there tightness in the chest? Are you clenching your hands or other parts of your body in response? And if so, can we take some of that ease from the body scan and apply it to this moment? Finding ease as we sit as a witness to our current experience. And as we start to explore sitting with this feeling, can we sort of name that part? It doesn't have to be a full first, middle, last situation, but can we call it something? Such as, mine is anxiety. Maybe I'll just use anxiety. And whatever you call your part, can we greet it with, I see you, anxiety. I see you. And our mind may start to find other things as it does, and that's okay. But let's take a moment to try to return to the present moment of being a witness to whatever part is coming up. Remembering that returning is the practice, returning to the breath, returning to this moment over and over again. I see you, anxiety. And as we begin to open up our invitation to this part that is here, the part that we're bearing witness to, can we practice by offering it some compassion? We can use these phrases. I see you, anxiety. I care for you. I am here with you. You are safe to set things down. I see you. I care for you. I am here with you. You are safe to set things down. I see you. I care for you. I am here with you. You are safe to set things down. Exploring what it feels like to bring compassion to the part that we're witnessing in this moment. And maybe compassion looks like something else. Maybe you imagine giving it a hug or placing a hand on its shoulder. Whatever feels good and right for you in this moment. But practice giving that part some compassion. I see you. I care for you. I'm here with you. You are safe to set things down. Remembering that you can always return to the breath as an anchor if things feel too messy. But I encourage you to practice with some compassion for yourself or for this part. I see you. I care for you. I'm here with you. You are safe to set things down. And as we did earlier, what does it feel like in your body to be meeting this part with compassion? Is there less tension or resistance? More? There's no right or wrong answer. Just remain curious to what might be coming up, both in the mind and the body, as we practice giving our part some compassion. I see you. I care for you. I'm here with you. You are safe to set things down. We'll practice in silence for the next few minutes. The meditation will end at the sound of the bell. I love that nature gave us a sound machine for that guided meditation. Rain is always my preferred choice on a sound machine. So tonight's talk is going to be on parts and clinging. As we continue to explore this theme of multiplicity within, and how IFS parts work and Buddhist practices overlap, today we're going to be diving into how parts are birthed through clinging and the cost of holding on to the identities that are formed through clinging, and how we can start to move through our identities with support of Buddhist practices and the practice specifically of what's called non-self or anatta. And when I first heard of this philosophical Buddhist teaching of anatta, I was immediately turned off. I was like, so you're telling me that I'm supposed to just float through life unattached to anything and no identity, when I'm already confused enough with what I have going on. But I didn't know that non-self was going to ultimately help me find clarity with the identities that I hold. And it just sounded like an existential crisis. So tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about that and exploring sort of this parts and clinging relationship. So the birth of a part. I know we've explored how parts come to be, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit more through the lens of identity and clinging. So parts emerge as a natural response to like fear, loss, uncertainty, in an effort for our minds to find strategies to manage the unmanageable in life. And clinging begins at the start of that as a form of care. So we wish to feel safe, we wish to feel loved or in control, when otherwise there's chaos or the opposite of that. We feel unloved, not safe. And so safety is at the root of most of this. And the Buddha described clinging as the root of suffering because it's tied to impermanent things. And we spoke about impermanence a few weeks ago, but just as a refresher, it's anything that arises due to external causes and conditions. So everything. But tonight we're going to be talking mainly about it as an identity. And so let's sort of put that all together. So a part is born when, one, we experience impermanence, fear, loss, uncertainty, and two, our minds, in response to that, to keep us safe with the arising conditions around us, with the fear, loss, uncertainty, creates sort of like what I'm calling a superhero, or the part. It creates this thing, mostly in IFS, that's called a manager, a firefighter, an exile. And with time, we find value in that part. It informs how we move through the world, and we cling to it as an identity to be held, to remain safe. Even if that impermanent experience, so the thing that started this all, the loss, fear, uncertainty, no longer exists. And so I'm thankful that my mind is fluid enough to be keeping me safe when things arise. And I thank it for that, but it is not always useful as life changes and as the circumstances around me change. In Outshining Trauma, which is the book that we've been referencing in this series, Ralph de la Rosa writes that parts are formed when pain, fear, or neglect are too much for the nervous system to process in real time. Makes sense. And this isn't a conscious decision that's being made. Like, no one's like, okay, right now I think I'm going to choose firefighter to help me navigate this thing. And the Buddha sort of, doesn't talk directly about parts work, but talks about this in relation to clinging by saying, grasping at what feels secure arises from aversion to pain and craving for stability. And that's not wrong. It's a very natural response to fear and loss and uncertainty. But how do we work with that? So for tonight, we're going to be using my trauma as an example. So to sort of set the scenario that we'll be working with, my father passed when I was 6, almost 7. I was a little babe. This isn't me at 6 or 7, but this is me as a little one, if you can see. So just picture this little one when we're talking. And my mind, in an effort to keep me safe from the unbearable change that was happening in my world, created a manager part, the manager. And this manager needed to be there to make sure that I knew where my mom was at all times, because as my only remaining parent, I needed to know that she was safe. My father passed in a car accident, just for reference, so it wasn't like my mom's safety was immediately at risk at every moment of every day, but I needed to know. And I needed to gather information to be able to process emotions that were arising, and the manager needed to be a planner with the utmost hypervigilance that got trained and perfected over 25 years to ensure that that level of pain was never experienced again. And job well done. Best employee I've ever seen, my manager, has nearly succeeded. And I found value in my manager over time. It often gets viewed as like resilience or reliability, detail-oriented. And that's where the identity is formed, right? So like we were saying earlier, the impermanence that arose. My father passed away. There was a lot of loss and fear and instability. The identity that was formed, my part, was my manager, who was reliable and hypervigilant and the planner of my life. And none of those things are bad on their own. I think it's good to be reliable. I think it's good to have some resilience in a life that is unpredictable. But they were like key markers of my manager part. My manager took a lot of praise in being resilient and the planner and hypervigilant. And I say these things as a story to as separate, but this is myself. This is not separate from who I am. But they're qualities that I grasp at when fear arises in my life or instability. They're a deeply formed identity that I never consciously made. We didn't enter into this as a partnership. She arose, my manager, and she's been around, ruling most of my life. And so, to quote one of my favorite teachers, Tueri Sala, we build habits of safety, out of avoidance, but real safety comes from knowing we can touch the fire of discomfort without being burned. And that's something that I had to learn over time. So now that we know where our part comes from, what is the cost of clinging to our part? And how does that safety keep us small? So while the protective parts helped keep 6-year-old me safe, it has over time instead created a world that keeps me small and fearful, a cage of sorts where my parts begin to cling to the outdated belief and stories and strategies that were once needed, the things that made them what they are. And in return, the manager is now managing in not the good way. It's micromanaging, like all the worst managers do. It restricts my ability to experience spontaneity, which is terrifying, absolutely terrifying. Don't be spontaneous ever. To find ease. What is ease without a little chaos, It keeps my world just within the realm of what my manager knew to be safe, in adult form, but still sort of within its safe parameters. Safety and limitations coexist. Neither is wrong in its supportive time and place, but when the seesaw of safety and limitations are being weighed one too heavily in either direction, we suffer. And the balance that can be found there is called equanimity. So being at ease with the arisings of life as they come, whatever might come. De La Rosa notes that trauma-related parts overstay their usefulness. I loved that. You're welcome. Overstay their usefulness when they continue to operate as if danger is still present. The Buddha called this cycle dukkha, or suffering, the unsatisfactoriness that comes from resisting change. And now along the way, I'm not consciously resisting the change of life, but my manager has told me that change is fearful, it's something to doubt, it's something to plan for. And so I have deep, deep gratitude for the manager that helped me feel safe, that learned to find safety in a world of change, that helped me learn how to process in real time, both of which I wasn't taught, how to navigate deep emotions or how to find a path after the fact. And so I am proud of my manager. And as I got older, slowly over time, so slow that you don't see that it's happening, there's this weight of being under my manager. My manager viewed life as something to fear and prepare for, all of the inevitable painful outcomes of life. I would say I don't but at the root of it, it's I fear spontaneity. How am I supposed to plan for an outcome that I don't know is coming? I fear change. How am I supposed to readjust all of my safety plans to accommodate change that I don't know is coming? I fear happiness. I don't have a plan for that. There is no safety plan for how to meet happiness. I only really know how to meet pain and fear. So happiness is a little scary. So in all the ways that my lovely and thoughtful and kind manager has now become the boss, I'm trying to separate from it in order to find more space in my life for possibility. Bell Hooks says, the moment we choose to love, we begin to move against domination, against oppression. The moment we choose to love, we begin to move toward freedom. And I loved this quote because I don't feel oppressed by my manager, but it shows that compassion is sort of the doorway to freedom. I hope I'm not bumming any of you out, okay? Like, I'm fine. My 6-year-old is fine and cared for and loved. We're going to get there. So next is seeing through identification. So who am I without my part? I don't know. When we begin to loosen the clinging we have to our identities, identity itself becomes more fluid. We're not erasing or dissolving the parts away that were born from that pain or fear. They're a part of us as a whole. But they've created patterns that we can begin to separate from. This isn't a rejection, but a recognition that the singular parts do not make the whole story of who we are. And this is what the Buddha was talking about when he speaks of not self. So Anatta. Before I was like, that sounds like an existential crisis. You don't know, like, identity what? Like, I love my identity, thank you. Instead, the I, like I am, the I and I am becomes a collection of changing processes rather than a fixed entity. I'm going to say that again. So the I becomes a collection of changing processes rather than a fixed entity. Man, that sounds so much better than being in my little safety bubble. That sounds so much better to be able to move and to experience and to be close to life. And so through practices like open awareness or metta, loving kindness, or compassion like we did in our meditation today, we can awaken to the fluid nature of identity. And then our practice of compassion sort of naturally expands to all of the parts of ourselves, not just the parts that we love or the parts that speak the loudest. De La Rosa describes integration as unblending, the process of recognizing that the self is distinct from, yet compassionate toward, its parts. When self-awareness meets a part with judgment, without judgment, the grip of identification softens, allowing a fuller and freer sense of being to emerge. So as I've spent years unpacking my parts, unintentionally, I haven't done like distinct periods of like IFS part work, but through therapy and a combination of practicing mindfulness and discovering Buddhist practices, I've become more aware of how and when my manager is showing up. I can have these like conscious parts of my day or in relationship or in conversation where I'm like that's you, and thank you for being here, but like you are not useful in this moment. And I can meet it with less judgment. I think before there was a lot of like clinging to that identity of my manager, of being the planner and resilient, also meant that I couldn't like fall apart, meant I couldn't like experience like deep sorrow or deep happiness. And so I held judgment around that, like, well, what if I did fall apart? Like, weak. No, just kidding. But I don't want to be judgy. I don't want to be judgy to myself or the reasons for why my manager needed to be there. So through this work, I can see that with less judgment. And I'm in no way healed or fully removed from my part or the depths of the patterns that the manager has built throughout my life. But it's all a little bit softer. And there's a little less judgment and a little more room for me to sort of explore new things, to be open to new experiences and new feelings. And I'll take that and keep working towards it. Bell Hooks says, letting go is a practice of freedom. We cannot hold on and be free. Whoa. So as we close tonight, I'm curious which parts of you are tired of working so hard and maybe want to be set free. In what ways are you longing to be more free? Maybe working through what we discussed here today could lead you to some answers if you're feeling stuck. Where was their impermanence? Where was their impermanence? Loss, fear, change, trauma. Can you see what parts might have been formed from that impermanence? Is there a manager, firefighter, exile? And upon reflection, have you built significant value in any of the parts where they've now been entangled into your identity? And seeing where the clinging is coming from, can you give yourself any compassion that might help create some ease around what your part is trying to do? It's a process, and knowing that all that I know now and sharing this with you all today, I will still need to spend time unpacking my part, of meeting myself and my parts with compassion, of continuing to be aware throughout my life when I'm moving through my own awareness or through my avoidance that has kept me comfortable. And so I'll leave you with this quote from Audre Lorde that says, "When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid." Which reminded me that the more I seek out the fluidity within my identity and the expansiveness of my being, the less it becomes important how afraid I am. So thank you for your time.